For all that celebrations are magnificent, at the heart of the pageantry is a simple message: service.
The pen hovered for only a heartbeat, yet the decision waiting beneath it threatened to reshape the future of Britain's most famous family forever. Inside a silent chamber at Buckingham Palace, every face around the polished table carried the weight of history, but none more than Prince William's. Before him rested a single document that promised to end years of controversy with one irreversible act. There would be no televised announcement, no dramatic confrontation, only the quiet sound of ink meeting paper and the realization that nothing inside the House of Windsor would ever be the same again. Before we uncover the chain of events that led to this extraordinary moment, make sure to subscribe so you never miss our latest royal stories. William's fingers remained fixed against the edge of the decree as advisors watched without speaking. Weeks of confidential meetings, legal reviews, and constitutional discussions had led to this point, each one asking the same impossible question: could the monarchy protect itself without permanently breaking one of its own families? The document before him carried an answer that would echo far beyond palace walls. If approved, Meghan would lose her remaining royal status, while Prince Harry would find the final bridge between himself and official royal life quietly removed. Across the room, King Charles sat in complete silence. His expression revealed the struggle between a sovereign determined to preserve the institution and a father unwilling to lose another piece of his family. Every passing second made the choice feel heavier. William glanced toward his brother's name one final time, remembering the years they had stood together through unimaginable grief, public duty, and relentless scrutiny. Those memories offered comfort, but they could not erase the responsibility now resting on his shoulders. The atmosphere shifted when a confidential file was placed beside the decree. Its contents had been shared with only a handful of trusted officials, suggesting there were truths hidden from public view that had influenced everything unfolding inside the palace. Even Catherine sensed that the decision had been made long before anyone entered the room that morning. She understood this was never about a single interview, a memoir, or one public accusation. The real turning point had occurred behind closed doors during a private royal gathering, where one unexpected incident destroyed the last hope of reconciliation. Every road leading to William's decision traced back to that unforgettable day at St. George's Chapel. The private memorial at St. George's Chapel had been planned with extraordinary care. Invitations were delivered discreetly, security was tightened, and every member of the royal household understood that the gathering was meant to remain beyond public attention. King Charles believed that removing cameras, reporters, and official ceremonies from the equation might allow old wounds to begin healing. For the first time in years, there was hope that the family could meet not as headlines or symbols, but simply as relatives carrying the same painful history. The atmosphere inside the chapel reflected that hope. Soft light filtered through centuries-old stained glass, while quiet hymns echoed beneath the vaulted ceiling. William exchanged only a brief nod with Harry. Neither brother smiled, yet neither turned away. Catherine remained close to William, sensing how much rested upon a few fragile hours. Meghan arrived moments later with calm composure, greeting the family politely before taking her place among the guests. To anyone watching from a distance, the gathering appeared respectful, even peaceful. Beneath that calm surface, however, years of disappointment, mistrust, and unresolved arguments waited for a single spark. Before the service began, Meghan quietly approached Catherine and asked whether they could speak in private. Catherine agreed, leading her toward a small preparation room beside the chapel where clergy traditionally gathered before important ceremonies. The room offered privacy, but it also removed them from the reassuring presence of the rest of the family. Their conversation began with measured voices. Meghan questioned whether she and Harry would ever again be welcomed into official royal life. Catherine answered carefully, explaining that rebuilding confidence required patience and mutual understanding. Neither woman raised her voice at first, yet every answer seemed only to deepen the divide. As the discussion continued, frustration gradually replaced restraint. Meghan argued that repeated criticism and public judgment had left her feeling permanently excluded. Catherine responded that trust had been damaged on every side and could not simply be restored through promises. The exchange grew increasingly emotional until voices carried beyond the closed door. William, hearing the tension from the corridor, excused himself from the memorial preparations and walked toward the room. He hesitated before opening the door, hoping the disagreement might end on its own. Instead, he heard another sharp exchange that convinced him the conflict had reached a point where simple reconciliation might no longer be possible. Harry arrived only seconds later, finding both his brother and wife visibly shaken. No accusations were made immediately. Silence settled over the corridor while members of the household looked toward one another with growing concern. King Charles understood that whatever had happened inside that room had altered the mood of the entire gathering. Although the memorial service continued as planned, every prayer and every reading unfolded beneath an unspoken realization that the family had drifted even farther apart. The ceremony ended without public incident, but William left believing that a private conversation would soon become unavoidable, and that the future of the family's relationship might depend on decisions no one wanted to make. The days following the memorial passed without a single public indication that anything extraordinary had occurred. Palace engagements continued, official statements remained routine, and photographers captured the familiar rhythm of royal life. Behind the walls of Windsor, however, senior advisors were quietly assembling reports, reviewing accounts from those present, and attempting to understand whether the confrontation had been nothing more than an emotional disagreement or evidence of a deeper breakdown in trust. William insisted that no decision should be made in anger. If the future of the monarchy was to change, it would be because every fact had been carefully examined. King Charles refused to abandon hope. He requested private conversations with both sons separately, believing that distance and emotion had prevented either of them from expressing what truly mattered. His first meeting with Harry lasted several hours and remained known only to a handful of trusted aides. Those present later described long periods of silence interrupted by deeply personal conversations about duty, family, and the burden of living beneath constant public attention. Charles urged his younger son to consider whether rebuilding confidence required patience rather than public confrontation. Harry listened respectfully, yet admitted that too much had happened for simple reassurances to erase years of disappointment. William reached a different conclusion. Instead of seeking immediate reconciliation, he focused on protecting the institution he would one day inherit. He instructed palace officials to review existing agreements governing private family discussions, confidential meetings, and the use of royal connections in commercial activities. None of the proposals were designed as punishment. They were intended to establish clear boundaries that could prevent future misunderstandings from becoming public controversies. Even so, William understood that introducing such conditions would almost certainly be interpreted as a sign that trust had already been badly damaged. Several weeks later, invitations were delivered for a confidential meeting at Windsor. Only a small group would attend. William, Catherine, Harry, Meghan, and the King agreed that no private secretaries, legal representatives, or communications advisors would enter the room. Every participant would speak for themselves. The atmosphere before the meeting reflected quiet determination rather than open hostility. Each person arrived carrying different expectations. Charles hoped the family would discover a path forward. Catherine hoped honest conversation might replace suspicion. Harry wanted clarity after years of uncertainty, while Meghan believed the meeting represented an opportunity to explain decisions that had often been misunderstood outside her own perspective. William entered last, carrying a slim folder that contained months of notes and recommendations prepared by palace advisors. He placed it on the table without opening it immediately. Looking around the room, he acknowledged that every person present had experienced pain, disappointment, and public scrutiny in different ways. No one, he said, could rewrite the past. The only remaining question was whether the future would be built upon renewed confidence or permanent separation. As silence settled over the room, everyone understood that the conversation about to begin would shape the monarchy for years to come. The discussion continued for more than 2 hours, interrupted only by long silences that often carried greater weight than the words themselves. William finally opened the folder resting before him. Rather than presenting accusations, he outlined a series of proposals designed to redefine the relationship between the royal institution and family members who no longer carried out official duties. Future participation in state occasions, access to confidential meetings, and involvement in ceremonial events would depend upon shared expectations of privacy, mutual respect, and institutional responsibility. William stressed that these measures were intended to protect the crown's stability rather than diminish anyone's personal worth. Harry listened without interrupting until the final page was turned. He admitted that mistakes had been made on every side and acknowledged that public disputes had widened divisions that once seemed reparable. At the same time, he questioned whether rebuilding trust could ever succeed if every future interaction began with restrictions instead of reconciliation. Meghan echoed that concern, arguing that respect could not grow where one side believed it was being judged before it had the opportunity to be heard. Catherine responded gently, explaining that confidence, once broken, required consistent actions over time rather than promises made in a single afternoon. King Charles remained silent for several moments before speaking. He reminded everyone gathered around the table that titles, ceremonies, and constitutional responsibilities had always existed to serve something larger than themselves. Families, he said, survived not because disagreements disappeared, but because people continued searching for reasons to remain connected despite them. His words softened the atmosphere, yet they did not erase the difficult choices facing the future king. William respected his father's appeal, but believed leadership sometimes demanded decisions that carried lasting personal pain. As evening approached, no formal agreement had been reached. The meeting ended with quiet handshakes instead of reconciliation. Harry and Meghan departed Windsor knowing that profound differences remained unresolved. William stayed behind after the others had left, standing alone near the window overlooking the castle grounds. Catherine joined him without speaking. Both understood that whatever happened next would define not only public perceptions of the monarchy but also the private relationship between two brothers whose lives had once followed the same path. In the days that followed, speculation spread rapidly across newspapers, television programs, and online discussions. Commentators debated whether the royal family had reached an irreversible turning point or whether time might still create opportunities for healing. Palace officials declined to comment beyond brief statements emphasizing the king's continued commitment to family and constitutional duty. The silence itself became part of the story, encouraging endless theories about conversations that had taken place behind closed doors. For William, the experience reinforced a difficult lesson that every future monarch eventually confronts: personal affection and public responsibility do not always lead toward the same destination. For Harry, the meeting clarified that family bonds could survive disagreement even when institutional roles changed forever. Whether history would remember those events as the beginning of permanent separation or the first step toward eventual understanding remained uncertain. Only time would decide which legacy endured. The choices made inside Windsor Castle changed more than a single family meeting. They reshaped the relationship between personal loyalty and public responsibility, leaving every member of the royal household to carry a different burden. William accepted that leadership sometimes required decisions that would never feel like victories. Protecting the institution came at a personal cost, and he understood that history would judge both the outcome and the sacrifice behind it. Harry left with no simple answers. Although the disagreements remained, he recognized that some relationships could continue only when both sides accepted uncomfortable truths. His connection with his father survived through private conversations rather than public ceremonies, proving that family bonds could endure even when official roles changed. Meghan also moved forward on her own terms. Rather than allowing royal titles to define her future, she focused on building a separate identity beyond palace traditions and expectations. Whatever opinions surrounded her, she remained determined to shape her own path. King Charles carried perhaps the heaviest responsibility of all. As a father, he wished the divisions had never grown so deep. As monarch, he accepted that the crown demanded stability above all else. He continued searching for moments of quiet understanding, even knowing that complete reconciliation might never arrive. Catherine stood beside William throughout every difficult decision, recognizing that duty often required silent strength rather than public celebration. The story ultimately became about more than titles, ceremonies, or constitutional questions. It revealed how even the most famous families can struggle when trust is broken and expectations collide. Some wounds slowly heal. Others become lasting reminders of choices that cannot be undone. Whether history views those decisions as necessary or heartbreaking will remain a matter of perspective for generations to come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next royal documentary. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.